Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us, whether you're on Zoom tonight or on Facebook Live. It's great to have you with us. I'm Vanessa Riley. I'm going to run through a few housekeeping points, particularly for those of you that might be with us for the first time. I do hope that you're coping okay in the heat and that you have found a cool spot today to listen in. In terms of the format for tonight, I'll hand you over shortly to our CEO, Alan Butler, to introduce Wendy, and then Wendy will spend some time sharing with you about the work of PiFò Haiti. At the end, there'll be a time for you to be able to ask your own questions. So as previous events, just type your question into the Q&A function. There should be a button box at the bottom of your screen, or into the comments on Facebook Live. And we'll try and answer as many questions as we can at the end and hope to be finished within the hour. Tonight's event is being recorded, so it can be used again at a later date, but your cameras and microphones are off, so you don't need to worry about those. It's just us, the three of us on the screen, should I say, but mainly Wendy, who's taking the spotlight today. So now I'll pass you over to Alan to introduce our guest.
Thanks very much, Vanessa. Hello to Wendy Thiessen, who's joining us from Canada. I'd like to welcome you today, Wendy, to the Zoom update on the work and ministry of PiFò Haiti, as well, of course, as a warm welcome to all our listeners online. Thanks for connecting with us this evening. Wendy Thiessen is the volunteer director of PiFò Haiti in Haiti and has been working closely with the ministry for over 10 years. Not only do they support over 500 children through 3 primary schools and support 30 staff, but also the people of Haiti through many locally led programs and initiatives. So Wendy, it's great to be able to offer you a welcome to the UK today, even if it's only a virtual welcome. Thanks for giving time from your busy schedule to join us today. And before I hand over to you, just like to ask one question, really. If you could briefly explain to our listeners why it's you, a Canadian, on this call today, rather than a Haitian member of the team. I think people would find that helpful to understand.
For sure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity I have to share about the great ministry that they're doing on a small island off mainland Haiti. Most people are actually quite disappointed when they see a white person up on the screen or a white person in front of them. I think they're confused that it's not someone who's Haitian. It started as me just kind of visiting Haiti and being as a participant on a trip. And what I realized what was really missing was a cultural context to what was happening in Haiti. And the more I learned about the culture and the more I learned the language, the more I was able to understand why certain things work, why certain things don't work. And I was able to come home to Canada and speak to Westerners about, things like, why don't people smile in photos, or why doesn't sponsorship maybe work, and we're only able to have access to what the media shows us. And it's certainly not a representation, and I'm sure we all know that it's not a true representation of what's happening. So when I'm in Haiti, I advocate and I kind of add a cultural context for the Western perspective. And when I'm here at home, what I do is I add a cultural perspective to why things work and don't work in Haiti, based on what I've learned over the last 10 years and continue to learn. So I'm kind of an advocate, but I'm not the one holding the microphone for myself. What I'm doing is kind of pulling out the chair for our Haitian partners and saying, have a seat at the table with us, so that cultural and language isn't become a barrier for us. And then we're able to sit at the table working together rather than us, telling them what we think they should do. So that's why I'm here. And I travel back and forth, but most of the time I'm here in Canada. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for clearing that up. I think Harriet has some video, and we'll pass over to you formally.
Okay, sounds good. So we are PiFò Haiti, and we actually rebranded and changed the name a few years ago. We wanted to capture a name that was a Creole word, and that means stronger Haiti. So that was chosen by our partners in Haiti. This is my family, the first slide, because without them, I can't do any of what I do. It's our daughter, Katie, on the left. She's actually living in Plymouth. So she's at university in marine biology down in the South UK. So she's loving it there. Our son, Hunter, he's 24, and he just bought a house and moved to the Eastern provinces in Canada. And my soulmate, my number one fan, my husband, Ken. So yeah, love them. It's great to have them along with me. A little bit of history here, and I'm probably going to ask Harriet to pause this slide. When I talk about a cultural context and how important it is, when the countries that we're working in, we need to understand a little bit about the history. And Haiti's history, to me, is very much like peeling layers of an onion. There's just more and more and more and more, and it actually really helps in the work that we're doing to understand what happened in Haiti and kind of a bit about the last few hundred years. So 1492, we all know 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That's when he arrived in Hispaniola. And I'm sure a lot happened in that couple hundred years there, but in 1697, the Spanish actually had to cede the western part of the island to the French. So the western part of the island is Haiti. The eastern part of the island is what we now know as Dominican Republic. So it was a slave-based agricultural plantation. So it was a plantocracy. They had upwards of 30,000 African slaves that they were using on a annual basis. So that's a really big slave trade that was happening there. 1804, the population of rebelled, and they declared independence over the country. So the slaves revolted. Haiti is actually the first Black-led republic and the first independent Caribbean state. So that is just absolutely amazing. They rebelled against the plantations. They took back control of their country. Between 1804 and 1825, Haiti, which was known as Saint-Domingue, was actually kind of negotiating with France to say, hey, we want to be acknowledged as a sovereign republic. And the King of France was saying, no, no, no. So it was back and forth between 1804 and 1825. Then 1825, all of a sudden, the French king decides, hey, you know what? Actually, we are going to acknowledge you as a sovereign republic, but what we're going to do is ask you to pay compensation to the slave owners because now they're not making any money because you revolted. So now you're going to not only pay them, what they were charging was, it was 90 million francs they had to pay. So not only were they charging them, what they said, actually, Harriet, if you could just pause that for a second. What they actually said to them was, not only are you going to pay that, you are going to borrow money from our French banks at a high interest rate, and then you're going to pay that back. So it's what's known as Haiti's double debt. So not only were they paying the original debt, they also were being charged interest to pay that money back. And it was a little bit intimidating because the king sent over warships to deliver the information to say, hey, we're going to give you sovereign republic, no problem, but this is how much you have to pay. So they came over with fully armed warships to deliver that information. So as you can imagine, I'm sure Haiti wasn't really feeling like it was a negotiation. And they gave them 5 years to repay that debt. And obviously they couldn't do it, which is why they took on that double debt. That debt took over 100 years to pay back. And this is really important because a lot of people feel that Haiti is in the economic state that it's in because they've mismanaged money. Well, now they paid that debt back in 1947. That's like really recent. So I think it's important for us to know that they had that 100 years, they couldn't really make money. So almost 40% of Haiti's national income went to paying off the reparation to the French. So to give you a little bit of context there, I looked up for the UK, just in the last quarter, the UK's gross national income was $606 billion over the first quarter. So let's say if you had this debt and you were Haiti, $242 billion of that 606 would go to paying off debt. So that's a huge number. And they lost 100 years of the ability to make money, the ability to invest in their country. And that's kind of where they got to the place that they were at. Another piece of important information about the double debt is this is what happened after the earthquake. So many people will ask me, you know, why did Haiti waste the money? We gave the money, they didn't use it wisely. And what a lot of countries were doing is they were saying, we'll give you $1 million to help build the infrastructure after the earthquake, but you need to buy our equipment, you need to hire our people, and that's how it's going to get done. So instead of investing in local workers and in the local economy, they were saying, we'll give you the money, but only if you use our workers and our tools, our equipment, and you have to buy them. So that is important information. So, okay, thanks, Harriet, sorry. So next slide here that we're going to go to is, this is called Negmaoun, and Negmaoun basically means black man. And he's right outside of the presidential palace, and he represents the Haitian slaves revolting. And it's a very, very important piece of information for the Haitians. This is Port-au-Prince, and this is not even abnormal. This is a normal day. And it kind of reminds me of how we have to work with the Haitians. There's no critical thinking. So you can see here, there's no traffic lights, just everyone's now gridlocked because they don't know who's going to go first. So a little bit of context there. These are pictures of some stores in Port-au-Prince. And I would probably guarantee that most of you don't know that these are the things that you can buy in Haiti. Because most of the time you're going to have churches and groups that say, can you please donate clothes so we can bring them to Haiti? And these are the actual stores in Haiti. I can buy all my food there. I can buy clothing there. I can buy anything I need. And even if I really wanted to buy a Porsche, I could buy a Porsche in downtown Port-au-Prince. So let's talk about paternalism and the economy. When you want to talk about paternalism, I want to define it as being the infringement on personal freedom and autonomy of a person or a country. So what that basically means is we're providing basic needs without consulting the people on what their needs are. So we're doing the we are better approach. So on the top photo here, this is called the Pepe Market. And in the bottom is bales of clothing that's been donated from other countries. So they've created an entire industry on donations that Westerners have decided that Haitians need. So they buy the bales of clothing, they sell it at the markets, and we've just flooded the industry. So like, how can we support the local economy when we aren't locals? We can ask, what do you need? When I go to Haiti, I only bring a carry-on bag because these are all the things that I can buy in country. And what I don't understand is economics make sense in our own countries, but when we talk about developing countries or third world countries, all of a sudden we throw economics out the window and think we know better. And these are the people I would miss out on building relationships with if I were to bring stuff with me and collect things to bring with me. These are the relationships we build with locals. I'm actually not even going to comment on this picture. I will allow you to draw whatever conclusions you like, but this was taken, I believe my husband and I were at the market and took that photo there. So this is the island of Hispaniola. If you could see on the left-hand side of that red line is Haiti. The right-hand side is Dominican Republic. And then the small piece of land just kind of tucked in Haiti there is La Gonâve, which is where we work, 25 kilometers off mainland Haiti. And I guess if you can see here, the difference of color of the Dominican side and the Haitian side, and that's because of deforestation. They have basically cut down trees for firewood. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about the violence in Haiti because I know that's a lot of what people are seeing in the media. It's important to know that of the kidnappings that are happening now, and it's daily, it is a lot. Since 2018, 95% of the kidnappings are Haitian citizens. They are not foreigners, they are not white people, but that is when you will see it hit the media, it's when it's white people. Harry, can you just go back to that slide if you don't mind, please? So 80% of the kidnappings that have happened for ransom have been committed by the same gang. And it's called the 400 Malozo. And they are only in Port-au-Prince in certain areas, but 1,700 schools have had to temporarily close due to safety concerns. So these kids were getting kidnapped. It wasn't a matter of if you get kidnapped. For a lot of families, they say, Wendy, it's a matter of when we get kidnapped. So they had to pay ransoms, and that would completely wipe out what little money they had. And now they have no home, they have nothing. And the gangs were using that money for buying more weapons to kind of take over the country. 92 civilians and 96 suspected gang members were killed in April 24th to May 16th. So that's less than a 3-week period. That's a lot of people. And those are Haitian people. So it's another thing that the media doesn't show us. It's the people in Haiti are the ones that are being kidnapped and murdered. It's not so much, I don't worry for my safety there, but I also don't hang out in Port-au-Prince. I do understand that it's very volatile. So thanks, Harriet. I love to see this sign because it means I've got to the safety of La Gonâve, which to me is a totally different country than the mainland Haiti. This is flying in. We used to take a boat. Now we fly in to Haiti or to La Gonâve for safety concerns for our workers as well. So this is La Gonâve. You see different people's homes and their properties. This is also La Gonâve. It is in the Caribbean. You know, I don't know why people think it's all garbage and you know, dirty children on the beach. It's what you see in the media, but this is also La Gonâve. This is Haiti. So now we're just on the main street. It's very dusty there, very dry there. They do have rainy seasons, but it's certainly nothing where you're going to get rain all day. It's dry. So the food programs, this is so exciting for us. We really had to expand our food programs in the last couple of years because of the price of food has more than tripled. And their price of food there is more than what we pay here. So we have a paid partnership with an organization called Trinity Hope out of the United States. And they provide 5 meals a day for our students in one of our schools. We have 10 elderly people who we have identified as high risk. And what we've done is provided them with rice and oil and some pasta, some spaghetti. And they come to our program manager, Emerson's house once a month, and they pick up the food there and bring it home, and they have neighbors that will help them cook it. So our people ask, you know, why do people have so many children in developing countries? You are the poorest of the poor if you don't have children or family that care for you. So that is one of the big reasons why we've identified these 10 elderly individuals, because they don't have family to care for them. So we check in on them and just make sure that they're taken care of and that they have someone that kind of knows that they exist. So we also added a prison program in 2022. So this year we were approached by the gentleman that runs the prison. And he said, hey, you know, we've heard about PiFò Haiti and the work that you're doing. We're having a problem feeding the prisoners. There's an article that came out, I think in the New York Times, talks about how many people are starving in the Haitian prisons. By law, the government is supposed to provide 1 meal a day. I don't know that that's ever happened. So the prisoners have been starving. Their families can't afford to bring them food. So we were asked to help out with that program, which we've been doing as well, which is great. And our annual budget, we're spending about £8,800 a year. And we have over 100 people that are receiving food through this program. So we're able to do a lot with a little bit, which has been really helpful. It's a great program. I think in the next few slides, you're going to see some individuals that are recipients of our food programs. You can have a whole other conversation of why this rice is from the United States, but that's what they have there. They have the rice, in the back is the pasta, and in the front, the oil. This is our manager, Emerson, and he's sitting with some of the elderly people. This lady wanted us to take her picture showing that she's giving God the glory for her food, which is awesome. It's a kids' food program at the school. They're able to do it on such a small amount of money. It's fantastic how many people we can feed. That day they were having a lesson on fruits and vegetables. So this is the mountain school. They're able to have food probably 2 to 3 days a week. We're not quite at the point where financially we can offer 5 meals a week. but we're hoping Trinity Hope will be able to take that school on as well. And we pay for 25% of the program. This is Monal Erme. He is one of everything. He's a lay preacher and evangelist. He does a hour of prayer radio show once a day during the week. Teacher, translator. He also supervises 5 schools' food programs. And we began working with Monal in 2019. And he's also married to our friend Masha Fedon, which I'm sure if you follow World Share postings, you've heard about her. She's an amazing school director and friend of mine, and grateful to be working with them. Monal, actually, I don't know if you've heard his testimony. It is available. He was a drug dealer for many years in Port-au-Prince, and he came to know the Lord, and he's just never looked back. He's an evangelist in many, many different areas. This is the school that they run. I could just see here, they didn't even know I was taking the video, and they're just loving life, enjoying playing together. And you could see there's the teacher skipping with the kids, and the teachers just spend so much time with them, even on their breaks. They're just available to them. And they certainly don't look like the kids that are unhappy. They are well cared for and well loved. And, you know, they're just very similar to the preschool kids we have here. If you look, you know, there's always that one group of kids that has a line of their own going. So very similar to here. We've started assisting Monal and their board of directors with building a second story on their school. They've run out of space there. So we're just so grateful that through World Share UK, we have been able to assist him with that. Teacher training, this is another one of our big programs. It is accredited through the Haitian Ministry of Education. And that was a really big learning curve for us as well. Harriet, we're just going to pause here for a bit. What we were doing originally when I went to Haiti and I became part of Haiti Christian schools when it was already existing, was we were bringing in teams of people to do teacher training. So they were teams of white people from North America, and we would run teacher training for a week. And I would say probably would cost us, by the time we paid for airfare and accommodation, food, everything, you're looking at some summers for that week, $15,000 American. That's a big number. So I kept thinking, why are we doing this? So I was asking people, and as I learned the language, I was able to have more of these important conversations to say, what's your feedback? What do you think? And they all would say to me, we love the meal. We love having the lunch. Okay, well, it's $15,000 is a lot of money to pay to feed, 160 teachers that came just for a lunch. What would be your answer to something that was tangible that would help you become a better teacher? And every one of them said, we don't understand what's being taught because it's not our education system. So once again, we were doing well, we're white, we know better. We have a better education system. We have more resources. And I just think that was just really arrogant of us to think that. And I needed to admit that arrogance so that we could move forward and say, how about we support you in a Ministry of Education accredited program, it's a 3-year program. It's basically teachers college, and they go to that after school every day. So most of the people that we have in there right now in the program are our current teachers, because 80% of the teachers in Haiti actually lack a formal education. So what we want them to do is to feel like they are valued and treated as professionals, because that's what they are. It's not a profession that is well respected in Haiti, and we want to change that. They spend a lot of time with the kids, and we want to invest in the teachers. So we had 4 teachers that just graduated in June of this year from the teacher training program. So they are now fully accredited by the Ministry of Education in Haiti as teachers, which is fantastic. So our goal is to add 6 more teachers in September. A lot of people ask, why can't we add more? Why can't we just, educate everyone? We just want to make sure that we have the right people in these programs, and we're not a big organization. And I think, especially in a country like Haiti, it's very important to keep things manageable. So we want to make sure that the people we have in teacher training want to be teachers. And we want to make sure that they are paying a portion as well, so that they have a vested interest. and a pride of themselves, because they are putting in some money into the program as well, and it's a sacrifice, and we want them to feel proud, and we want them to feel that that's their education and work that they've done. So this lady here, her name is Jidaleen, and she wrote to me and told me how great it was that she has learned so much. And what she's learned most is how she can teach the kids that don't learn at the same pace as the other children. And in a country where most of the education is rote or repetitive learning, it is just so freeing and so beautiful to hear that this is what they're learning there. And these are the teachers that are educating the children there. So thanks. I think you'll see a few pictures now of some of the teachers we have in the program. These are, they're so fun. You know, I want them to take a nice serious video, but we just have so much fun together. These are the teachers at Institution Jardin Fleury Frere Uni, which is Monal and Masha School. These are some of the teachers up at Pastor Sennett's. They're up in the mountains. The one gentleman is in the teacher accreditation program as well. And you can see here, the teacher has some bottle caps, and he's using them as manipulatives to count. So here we think in North America, oh, we need to give them school supplies. We need to give them stuff for didactics material as teachers. And, you know, they find a way, then they have a way that works for them. This is Abigail. She is the recipient of the Lillian Kwan Scholarship, which is a scholarship that was created for a family here who had lost a loved one, and they wanted to invest in a teacher. So she's doing her practical at Monal's school, but she just finished her first year. So she has 2 more to go, and she's incredible to see her working with the kids. So our agriculture project, we have currently a few teams that we're hired to work in a local garden. This is a garden up in Palma that we're going to be helping out, but we're not invested in taking over the program. So what our goal is for this program is to just come alongside and build them a what they would call a depot or a shed that will house the equipment that we have. We currently have a generator, we have the water tanks, we have a pump that we're going to replace, which you'll see in a minute, the pump system that they have now. Irrigation is a huge issue. So what happens is people are going from the island onto the mainland, they buy their produce there, they bring it up to Palma, which is where the big market is once a week, and that's where they're selling the food. So what we want to do is come alongside the people that have a garden area there. It's already fenced off, it's ready to go. All we need is to build a depot, which is part of the appeal that World Share is doing right now, part of that budget. So what can happen is if the community is going to run this garden, they already have a plan in place, they already have a committee in place. We don't want to interfere with that because it works for them. It's a great plan. And we just want to come alongside them and say, hey, we want to build a shelter for your tools and to keep everything safe. And then they can go from there. And the plan is to grow affordable produce there so that the merchant vendors can buy from the community garden at a reduced rate instead of having to travel to the mainland and get affordable produce, which is a safety issue. And it's also time consuming. It takes them an entire day to travel to the mainland, get produce and come back. And they take their life into their hands for sure, driving that road there because of the gang violence. So the proposed cost of the shed just to house the generator, the water tanks and the tools is about £2,900. And that's what they need for the concrete, the workers, transportation to get all the material up there. And then they will run it on their own there. So in the next picture, what you'll see is our office manager or project manager, Emerson, using the pump. And it's not easy. And especially if you're elderly or you have any kind of disability, it's not something that you would be able to do. It's not easy. So what we have is we have a pump system, like a sump pump, that we're able to put underneath and have a spigot system instead of having that pump there. And that's a community run well. So hopefully we'll be able to do that once we get the depot built. This is the property here where they want to put the community garden. You can kind of see it's the fenced in area that keeps the goats and other people out. And I was just kind of sitting back and just allowing them to have their planning meeting and discuss, what they want to do for this area. And these are the merchants up at the market. So these are the people that the community garden would be able to supply food to. So they would almost run it like a wholesaler. And these black tanks here, those tanks would be put on top of the concrete depot. And we have the generator too, that would go in there. So the school equipment is also a big part of the appeal that WorldShare is doing right now. Because we've expanded one of the schools and we're renovating one of the schools, they have a big need for benches in the primary grades. And also the preschool grades use tables and chairs. And they need shelving to keep their materials dry and protected, because it's a big expense to buy books and school materials. And they just hate to see them wasted with not having proper shelving. So they're going to repair some of them. Some of them they're just going to reuse, and then we need to add some of them as well. If just have too many kids on one bench, then they're not able to write properly. They're not able to focus properly because they just get really squished in there. So our proposed budget for the 3 schools is £2,600, and that will make enough desks, tables, chairs, blackboards or chalkboards as well, which is a desperate need. And the teachers have never, ever had desks to work on or to do their marking or to put their equipment in. And you'll see in the next few photos, some of the examples of the desks and the tables that we have in the classrooms currently. So, I mean, they're still usable. They said we could just replace the top wood on those. They don't need new everything. They are pretty frugal. But this is what they use. They sit there and that's what they write on. And sometimes they have 6, 7 kids on one bench, and teachers all acknowledge that's not great for learning. So what they want to do is have more so they can space the kids out and they can have a little bit more elbow room. That's one of the current blackboards or chalkboards. So we definitely need to make some of those with the frames, and they need them painted green so the kids in the back can see. This is the shelving that they have in one of the classrooms. It's just kind of been thrown up with extra wood, which we would hopefully plan to build proper shelving. And those are some of the chairs they use up in the mountain schools for the preschool classes. And this is how the teachers mark tests. This is how the teachers do their lesson plans. And they've never, ever really had a desk to work from. They've never had a desk to put their valuables in. And these are the proposed desks that we would like to do for them. These desks are made in Haiti. These were ones that were built in 2016 by a team that came down, and they trained a few Haitians to make them. So we're hoping to make some for each of the classrooms. And I think that's what they're most excited about. This is Pastor Sennett. We've been working with Pastor Sennett since 2012. So the year after I started working in Haiti. He's a pastor, a school director up in the mountain school. He's also a trained mason, which is fantastic because he's doing a lot of repairs at his school, and he has the know-how to do that. And he's got a few people working up there with him, and that will hopefully be finished by the fall for the new school year. When we first went there, the school and the church, which is kind of a shared facility, was built just using rocks and some masonry in between, but certainly not a safe structure. So now what we've been able to do, thanks to some generous donors at WorldShare, is we've been able to assist Pastor Sennett so that he can build a proper structure for classrooms. He's also going to build a school office and also has a depot, which he can store food for food program, and also any valuables that he can store in there as well, which is really, really important. So he's just a great man, very, very nice man. That's Pastor Sennett and Madam Sennett's house there. They live on the same property as the school. So they run a water catchment system there. Fresh water is very hard to come by, especially up in the mountains. So they have a catchment system there. This is the view from his property. So as you can see, it's much lusher, much greener than the original video I showed you of the main town, Onondaga, where we work. I've had such a privilege of seeing these young children grow. I've known them since they were babies, and they're just amazing, amazing kids. This was the bathroom. This was the latrine when we first started working there, and we just prayed that we didn't drink too much water and didn't have to use it. But $50 American was all I had to send, and this is what Pastor Sennett built. He built a latrine there, and that's the after picture, and we're just so grateful they're able to have good sanitation. This is what the school looked like when we first started going. And in the background there, you see, it looks like a piece of material. That was a parachute that we brought to play with the kids. And one of the churches that did a vacation Bible school program bought the kids a parachute to play with. And it's just another humbling experience for me to say, they really didn't need the parachute to play the games. What they needed was a roof, because they used the parachute for a roof because it was so hot and the sun just beats down, and they needed to cover the roof and protect the kids. So another humble learning lesson for me, ask what they need rather than assuming what would be something fun to bring. This is the building that's going on right now. I was there in April, and this video was taken then. Pastor Sennett has been mentoring these gentlemen. The gentleman in the red shirt is an apprentice, so he's able to get apprentice hours as well as helping Pastor Sennett build. And as you can see, that structure is so much more sound than the old ones. This is Emerson del Moss. He's the one that makes things happen in Haiti. Without him, I couldn't do what I do from here. I would have to be in country a lot more. He began working with us in 2016. And I think what's really important to know about Emerson, and something that I learned was you don't always have to choose the extroverts to work with when you're running a nonprofit. And what happens is a lot of white people, a lot of white foreigners, they choose to find the people that speak English because it's easier. And they also find kind of the louder people that are in your face because it's easier. And they're right there and you don't have to look for them. And how do you look for somebody in a culture that's not your own, where you don't speak the language? And a lot of nonprofits and white Western organizations work with people who can speak English, who are translators. And the majority of translators actually have a criminal background. And what happens is they were in the United States, maybe committed a crime, and were deported back to Haiti. So it's very challenging when we need to find a translator. We need to find people who we know haven't, committed any crimes against children. They haven't murdered anybody. It's not simple. So I found Emerson one day. I was asking if someone knew how to scan a document, and nope, no one knows how. And Emerson pipes up and says, I can do that. I have a degree in computer science. And I said, are you kidding? Where have you been? And it's not where has he been, it's where have I been? Where my eyes weren't open to seeing him because he's very quiet and very reserved. And we're just so grateful. I'm grateful that God has allowed us to work together. And one of his favorite things to do is he's a thinker. I'm a kind of hyperactive ADHD worker, and I'm go, go, go. And I'll ask him question after question. And he just does this to me. And he says, Wendy, you need to stop because I'm thinking. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And he's just got such great heart for his community and an amazing critical thinking mind. And that is really, really hard to find in Haiti because not many people need to critically think, because Westerners have always thought on their behalf. Westerners have always told them what to think and what to do. So it's not common. So to have someone who's managing our projects in Haiti that understands that has been such a benefit to us. He also teaches French, and he's just become a volunteer with the local police auxiliary. He's really involved in the community, and he allows PiFò Haiti to develop good relationships with the mayor and other people in the community. Just as we're Jesus followers, 100%, but we don't want to only work with other Christians in churches. We're Jesus followers out in the community and just being examples and loving others. That is our mandate. And those are the projects we look for. How can we help? That's Emerson and his wife, Farah. This is Romeo. This is Emerson and Farah's son. And this is Emma. She's actually our goddaughter, and she's cute as a button. And I think she gets her sassiness from me, but no, I can't take credit. She's just a great family. This is Emerson delivering food. He does a lot of work carrying stuff around and delivering things to the elderly people that can't come to his house to come and pick up their food. I've heard him many times just being so saddened by the lack of resources in his community and the needs. He is asked on a daily basis, help us, help me. When you have a job, you actually end up being the person that spends money on your neighbors, your friends, your family, because they know you have income. And when it's a 70 to 80% unemployment rate on La Gonâve, and you have a job, you now have a huge responsibility to the people in your community. And it's another thing I've observed from a little bit of a distance, and I couldn't even imagine that kind of weight of the world on your shoulders. This is the back of Emerson's house. Emerson has 10 people that live in his house. On the left-hand side there is currently a kind of an extra building, and this is what our goal is, to rebuild that. It is not a safe structure. We would like to rebuild that and create an office area, and also an area to store the food for our food programs. Emerson has his office inside his house, and with the amount of people that living in the house, it's just not feasible. And I think it's not respectful for us to ask him to use that space in his house as an office area. So it's 2011 when we first started. We had 36 kids. Now we're close to 500, and those certainly are the faces of some happy kids enjoying school and enjoying their education. Just Yes, and you are all a part of that joy and the jumping and just the animated children. And we're just so grateful for your support. I'm grateful for this platform that we have, that we're able to share information. I think it's an important job for us. And the important job for me when I come home is how can we maybe be doing missions a little bit differently? How can we as churches do missions a little bit differently, and not be arrogant enough to say that we know what people need. So when I'm home, I do a lot of advocating for doing things a little bit differently and saying, we want to ask, what can we do? We want to come alongside you, but we certainly don't want to have the ideas coming from our heart, certainly not coming from mine, because I do acknowledge I'm not Haitian, and God didn't allow me to be born in Haiti. I'm Canadian. So as a Canadian, what can I be doing to advocate on behalf of, and also just to say, I humbly can express to you what I have learned the hard way. And I think what that's shown me is how we need to be doing things in a different way, how we need to support local economies in developing countries, and how we have to change the narrative. Take the time to learn, because once we know better, it's our responsibility to do better. It's my responsibility to change what people see in the media, as it's not acceptable to continue to teach people that Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And most websites that you see that describe Haiti will tell you that, and that is like their tagline for everything. And I say, no, we don't want to define them as that. Can we not define them as being the first Black republic and the first independent Caribbean state? Haiti was known as the Pearl of the Antilles. They were the richest and most prosperous French colony in the West Indies. So they have so much potential, but we keep stifling that potential by making our ideas the ones that are there. So yeah, that's what we do, and we thank you.
Wendy, thank you so much. I thought I knew something about PiFò Haiti, but you've really shared and inspired me, as well as hopefully other people today. I think Vanessa's going to switch on and start fielding some of the questions that people have been asking. Thanks.
Such an interesting time listening to what you've got to say, Wendy. It's just so inspiring, and knowing what you've been through in terms of your journey with the people of Haiti and Gonâve in particular. It's just so lovely to hear your passion, and that comes through so clearly. We have had a few questions in so far, and there are a few more coming in. So I will just cover those now. So the first one is about the media, which you talked about, changing the narrative. So how can we help break the barriers of what the media allows us to see compared to what actually happens? So the economy, violence, etc.
I think it's important to talk to people who have been in country, people who are involved with the grassroots industries of grassroots organizations that know what's happening in Haiti because they are there or they've been there and they have some context to add to that. And I think sharing those photos from those either websites or from those people and saying, no, I know this organization, this is what they're doing, and these are the pictures they're showing. And when we know a little bit more about Haiti, it's going to change the way that we view what's in the media. So we need to be able to look with a bit of wisdom into that and say, I'm just not going to look at that as being exactly the truth. I'm going to find out and do some truthing for myself. And having conversations like this one is very important. I have many people email me and say, is it safe for me to go to Haiti right now? And I say, I'm in Canada, so I actually can't answer that question for you. So you need to have strategic people in Haiti that you can ask these questions to. And those are the people that can provide you with the honesty of what's happening in country. And then we need to share that amongst each other.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Thanks, Wendy. So the next one is about the teacher training program, and it's just a clarification of the cost. So you mentioned that the cost is £250 per teacher. Is that per year, or does that cover the 3 years?
It depends on which school they go to, but that they can do that in 3 years if we ask them to pay a percentage.
Okay.
So we don't pay for the uniforms. If you talk uniform, books and everything, then it's probably more like 150 American a year.
Okay.
Yeah, that's certainly not anything near what we pay.
No, of course not. I think our education system here as well is, I don't know the difference between Canada and the UK, but yeah, it's very expensive. The next one is again about the physical things versus the giving money, so that stuff can be purchased in country and made in country, which is obviously one of the key things with this appeal. And the classroom equipment is about stuff being made in Haiti, and creating jobs for people for carpentry and all of that kind of thing. And again, as you mentioned, with the community garden and the creation of jobs there in terms of growing food. Is there a way that we can show people how that want to give physical things that that's not necessarily needed, but they can still give? Do you have any words of wisdom in that, in how you've tackled that in Canada? And do you think, why do you think is that people want to give physical things rather than money?
I think that people want to feel that they are doing something tangible. That's one thing. And we talk about the shoe boxes a lot, and I don't have a huge conversation about it, but people want to physically, tangibly take their kids and their grandchildren or whoever and go to your, I think you have a pound store, we have the dollar store here. Yeah. And what they want them to do is pick things to put in the shoe boxes because it's tangible. And we think, how much money is spent on shipping the boxes? I have actually seen from the Haiti end what happens there with those boxes. And if you ask some of the parents, they might say, I would love to be able to send my kids to school, or we would really love a bag of rice. And yet we're sending them a box filled with cheap dollar store toys, because we are now raising a generation of young people that are now learning we need to give cheap toys to developing countries because it's better than nothing, and they should just be grateful. You know, and now everybody who's on this conversation now knows better. So we all, once we know this information, I take it very, very seriously. We all have a responsibility to stop the paternalism because it's self-serving. It becomes about us feeling good about ourselves. And there are some people that will say, I don't want to give the money to Haiti. Haiti just wastes money. And I say, you know, I would love to sit down and have a conversation about where the earthquake funds went, just the funds that even got to Haiti. I can do that. But if you really don't want to give money anyways, let's just not waste each other's time, because the majority of those people don't want to give money anyway. They want to tangibly say, I gave whatever to the poor people of Haiti. And we need to change the conversation with churches, especially because when you've got groups going on missions trips, short-term missions trips, we cannot keep collecting flip-flops or sandals and all kinds of things that I know will put somebody out of business. So by having trips that are more discovery trips and relational, and this is what community looks like in Haiti, what we're able to do is introduce people to some of the vendors. Once you put a name and a face together, do you really want to have Mary Elode down at the market to not be able to send her kids to school because what she's selling to support her family, you have now filled 8 giant bags and brought to Haiti with you and dumped into their economy.
Yeah, I remember watching something or reading something that you'd done a while back, Wendy, where you talked about people bringing coffee to Haiti and how that was really counter. Obviously, the best coffee is in Haiti, as you said.
Yeah. Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
That was me that did that. That wasn't even someone else. That was me.
Oh, that was in your early stories.
Yeah, that's why I wrote the article Humbled in Haiti, because the first time I went, I wanted to bless the missionaries there. And I thought, well, maybe I'll bring them Starbucks coffee, because obviously they'd be missing something like Starbucks because they've been in the mission field. And I basically was blessing them with subpar coffee, which is nothing compared to the Haitian coffee, which is 10 times better. So yeah, that was one of my thousands of humbling experiences there.
It's great. We therefore don't need to make the same mistakes. If I ever get to Haiti, that is. Sorry, we digress. The next question was to do with, I think, the water and the but it talks about water catchment system. So someone says, you mentioned a water catchment system. What does that mean?
They're basically, the catchment systems come off the eaves troughs at the top of the roof, and they collect the water from the rainwater. It's rainwater, basically. And they'll use that up in the mountains mostly. There are some well systems, what have West Indies, it's called WISH, West Indies Self-Help, and they have had a water program there for many, many years. And in the main town, we do have about 12 public water stations, which is fantastic, but up in the mountains, they don't have access to that. So they use water catchment systems, which is only as good as when it rains. So that's why a lot of times they have problems watering the crops, because they don't have access to the pump systems everywhere.
I understand that. Thank you for that. And I think I've got one final one here, actually. Let me just check that. So yes, so this one says, thank you for sharing your passion and vision with us, Wendy. My question is, what brings you the most joy about your partnership with the Haitians, and what causes you the most sleepless nights?
What brings me the greatest joy is to see what community looks like there, because I truly feel that when I'm in Haiti, I experience the community that Jesus talks about in the Bible. I don't experience that here in North America, but when I'm in Haiti, it is truly the most soul-filling experience to know what it's like to live in a community of people who care for one another. and who are looking to meet the needs of each other. And it feels so holistic. It feels like it's exactly how God's wired us to be. And when I come home, I'm usually quite depressed and sad. And it's really hard to adjust. And this has been probably 40 trips later. It's still hard. In some ways, it's harder. And I think the lesson there is Jesus saying to me, you know what it's like to live in that kind of community in Haiti. So why don't you recreate it in your own community? So that's kind of been my goal. It's not easy. I don't necessarily want to do it all the time, but I think that's something that God has called me to do here in Canada while I'm here. The hardest thing for me, and the thing that makes me the saddest, is they just can't get ahead. You know, it's one thing after another, and loss is not easy no matter where you live. But I think people say, well, it's easier in Haiti because they're used to it. You don't get used to grief. You don't get used to loss. Nobody's happy about being resilient. They don't want to be resilient. They want to break, you know, and I think it really makes my heart sad. It's just another thing after another thing. And they don't even have time to grieve because they have to keep working to feed their families. And we as North Americans allow ourselves a lot of time to grieve and be sad. And so I just feel sad that they don't have the time to do that. I feel sad that it just continues. It's a perpetual cycle of grief, you know, and yet they're the ones that encourage me with their hopefulness in saying, no, God hasn't forgotten us. We're still here, you know, and it's hard, you know, it's hard when I see what we have in the material things, and I just feel like I want to do so much more, but I think those are Satan's lies too, that it's not enough. Mm-hmm.
I think what's great is this leads us on quite nicely to the prayer points, which I think I'm not sure whether Alan's around with. Is there some prayer points that we were going to cover last at the end here? We
are indeed, and I think Harriet's going to share those with us. So thank you.
Yeah, these are our prayer requests. It's always the country of Haiti. You know, Haiti will always need our prayers. The people are tired, they're discouraged, and they're afraid now because there's a lot of safety issues and insecurity. They don't have a government really in place right now, which is never a good thing. There's no social programming there. So it's just a very volatile situation for Haitians in the whole country. And also for Emerson, he's been struggling a little bit lately with his health and just for emotional and spiritual strength as he seeks God's wisdom. He has people at his doorstep every day, multiple times in the day, of people asking him for help. And I think, as you can imagine, it would be exhausting because he needs to say no to some people. And every need there tends to be a viable need. It tends to be a life or death kind of food or medical care situation, but he can only do so much and we can only do so much. And he's the man kind of standing in between us and the people there. So he definitely needs prayer for strength. And if the work of the schools would be completed on time, they would find the funds they need to finish. The price of everything has just gone up because of the insecurity on the roads and the safety issues. But they all say, you know what, God's going to provide, Wendy, and we just add it to the prayer list, and he's going to provide for us. So far, they're great. They're right on track. Everything's going well, and they're encouraged because we are encouraging them from here, and they're just overwhelmed in imagining that people in the United Kingdom are actually connected to them, and that we're actually doing this Zoom web meeting today. Just that PiFò Haiti would continue to be seen in the community as an organization of Jesus followers. We want to love people without an agenda. And I think also that's a little bit different than what the normal mission groups do. Anyone who says we're bringing Jesus to Haiti has never been to Haiti, because Jesus is alive and well in that country. And they have taught me more about spiritual life and family than I've learned here. What we're doing is we're just following with them as co-Jesus followers and loving people in the community, regardless of where they are at in life. And we just want to be continued to be seen that way.
Thanks, Wendy. Harriet, if you can just hold the slide on, I'd like to pray in a minute. But first of all, to say thank you, Wendy, so much for sharing your passion with us. You did warn us at the beginning, once you got talking, you would carry on talking, and you've certainly done that. But it's been a great privilege to understand a lot more about the situation in Haiti, to get your insights and really to understand some of the challenges that there are in Haiti every day, and just the amazing work that PiFò Haiti does, and how it equips, encourages and facilitates the local people really to take responsibility for their own development. What I would like to do is to pray now, but just to have said thank you for doing that with us today, and thank you for spending the time with us as well. So let's pray now.
Alan, could I just say a few words before you pray?
Sure.
And we finish? For everyone on the call, you may not be aware that this is Alan's last event as CEO of WorldShare, and we'll be handing over the reins in the next couple of days. Has been going through a handover period. So just want to say thank you to Alan for being part host of all of this, and for all the events that we've done over the last few years like this. And I'm sure everybody that's on this call would want to join me in wishing you all the best for the next stage of your life with Julia.
Thank you, Vanessa. That wasn't on the script, was it?
No, I know. Thanks for putting it in there, though, Alan.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you for the insights that Wendy shared with us tonight, for the privilege of really getting a deeper understanding of some of the work that's going on through PiFò Haiti in Haiti on a weekly and a daily basis. And we'd like to pray particularly for Brother Monal, for Pastor CNET, for the project manager Emerson, and others in the team. And we're conscious of these points that have been shared, that the people are tired and discouraged and afraid because of the lack of security. And Lord Jesus, we just pray that you would keep them safe, you would keep them working together, working with the community, strengthening the community bonds and supporting each other. And pray particularly for Emerson at this time as well, that he would get the necessary help, as he obviously struggles with his health, and he has the challenges of people asking for support day by day. And I know for myself that can be a challenge sometimes. And we do pray, Lord, that you'd equip him to be able to do that graciously, effectively, and not to feel the burden on himself, but cast the burden on you. And Lord Jesus, we pray that the work on the schools would continue to program. We just thank you for the support that was raised for that, for the generous donor who was able to make a difference so that those school buildings could be expanded. And we pray that at this time, with increased costs, that indeed the work would be finished on time, and if there's a shortfall, that can be found to help out. And finally, Father, we want to pray for the three individual little programs that we talked through tonight, that currently WorldShare is raising funds for. And we thank you that, Lord, you've progressed matters quite a long way, but there is still more funds needed. And we know, Father, that you would delight in being able to give what is needed in PiFò Haiti to really make a difference in those three areas. And so, Father, we just want to thank you for PiFò Haiti. Lord Jesus, we also want to acknowledge that PiFò Haiti would not be seen as a place of buildings, but it would be seen as a place that points people to you, a place of Jesus followers and who would love those around them without having any reason to do it without an agenda in that they would love those around them in the community unconditionally. And finally, we just want to say thank you for Wendy tonight. Thank you for her sharing her passion with us. And we pray that as all of us go our separate ways now, that you would help us not to forget about what Wendy has told us. Amen.
Amen.
Everyone who's on the call, we just want to say thank you. We hope you found this webinar inspiring and informative. And if you're on a laptop or PC as you exit the meeting, then you'll be directed to a web page which will give you some ideas on following up some of the things that Wendy spoke about. And we just thank you for sharing with us tonight, and thank you, Wendy, particularly for being with us. So thanks, everyone, and good night, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.